Good morning. Javier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, joined by our leadership and our ranking member from the Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. We had not only a good conversation, but a serious conversation in our caucus meeting this morning with some of the high-ranking officials from the administration's Department of Homeland Security about this issue pending by Friday, which could lead to a shutdown of our security agencies and the ability for us to know that we will vigorously do everything to defend the American people here at home, and also at the same time pay those who are asking to put their lives on the line to defend us here in the homeland. And it's difficult to believe that we would be put in this situation, but here we are. Just a few short days from watching the Department of Homeland Security have its resources exhausted and in many ways shut down. And so we're hoping that our colleagues on the Republican side will change their behavior, do what we know would be right, and that is to not put in peril whether it's the Americans in a shopping center or Americans trying to make it into work in a government building, or whether it's protecting our waterways, our ports. We need to have that security, and we believe now is the time to do it the right way. We are asking that our colleagues, both in the Senate and the House on the Republican side, provide us with a clean funding bill that is free of the irresponsible social agenda items that our Republican colleagues have foisted on this important funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security. There are countless thousands of workers who intend to go in next week to work to protect our homeland and to protect American people throughout the country. They may still have to go into work, but they may not get paid for doing that. That is not right. You don't run a business this way. You wouldn't run the largest government this way, and certainly you wouldn't run the agency charged with the security of our homeland this way. And so we're hoping that before the clock ticks down on Friday, we will have a straight and clean funding bill for all of our Homeland Security agencies. With that, let me yield to our leader, and then we will go to our whip and our vice chair. I know that the ranker on Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security has to leave, so I'll go to her. Then I'll ask our chairman of Communications to go next, and then Mr. Van Hollen, our ranker on Budget, to go next. Madam Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of getting to our appropriator, where all of this is happening, I will be brief. When we first established the Department of Homeland Security following 9/11, I was part of the group that set up the committee and that would set up the department. And it was curious to me how the name was chosen. Of all the names we could have named the Department of Homeland Security. But Homeland Security emerged as the name because it described what the department does very clearly. It's about the homeland. It's about your home. It's about the ability of this department to help keep your neighborhoods safer and our country safer. In fact, the safer provisions of the bill are immediately applied to safer neighborhoods. So whether it's police and fire, first responders of any kind, the assessments that Mr. Crowley will talk about to protect the American people from any other threat. It's about you, your home, your neighborhood, our country. And that is what the Republicans are being very frivolous about. Our oath to protect and defend the home, the homeland. So I would hope that they would, I believe that the judge decision in Texas was a bad one, but it is one that gives them face-saving way to just get this job done, pass the funding until the end of September, the end of the fiscal year, and let us keep the American people safe. If they don't do that, it's clear their real motivation was just to shut down government, and the immigration issue was an excuse, not a reason. So I hope that as the Republicans emerge from their caucus, they will do so more sober and somber about what their responsibilities are. I've reached out to the Speaker and said we want to help in any way that we can to get this done and remove all doubt about our commitment to honor our oath of office. With that, I yield to the distinguished Whip, Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Leader. The Republicans pledged to America that they would not join together very controversial issues with non-controversial issues. It took them less than 2 weeks to break that pledge to America. And in doing so, they have put the safety of Americans and the security of America at risk by taking hostage a bill that we all support, which in December I advised them they would be in a cul-de-sac and would be right in the place that I predicted. And that is where we need to, and the American people expect us to protect their security, protect them and their families. It is time to pass the Department of Homeland Security's appropriation bill for the entire year of 2015. Let us hope our Republican friends and the Republican leaders have the common sense and the sense of duty to do so. Bring that bill to the floor now, Mr. Leader. Vice Chairman. And to Mr. Crowley.
Joe Crowley of New York. Time is running out. We ought not be in this position that we're in right now, but time is running out if our Republican colleagues fail to bring a clean bill to the floor to fund the Homeland Security Department. We all lived through 9/11. I was in New York City when our city was attacked, when our country was attacked. And we know the devastating effect that that had on our country and on the world. And we can't afford to have something like that happen again. After 9/11, the Urban Area Security Initiative, UASI, was established to assess the threat against high threat areas in the United States, places like the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, but it could be somewhere in Omaha, Nebraska, anywhere around the country. That program will be suspended. The assistance the federal government gives to police departments like New York's and Omaha's and Los Angeles would be suspended if time runs out. Now, it's my understanding in terms of time that's been reported that our Speaker, John Boehner, the Speaker of the Republican Caucus, has not met with Mitch McConnell in 2 weeks. They haven't met in 2 weeks, and time is running out. In 2 weeks, they haven't met to discuss what is the most important issue that we as members of Congress are charged with, and that is to help protect the citizens of this country. They're failing in that responsibility. I also know for a fact that they turned down an invitation by the administration to come to their caucus to talk about what would actually happen if funding were to run out, if they were to stall, or if they would try to kick the can down the road and try to pass a continuing resolution on this. It's time to stop these artificial cliffs. The American people are tired of it. They were tired when they shut down the government, and they don't want the Republican Congress to shut down their security. That's what is at threat right now. Time is running out. They cannot let time run out. We have to act. We have less than 3 days to go. It's up to them to move on it. And with that, I'll yield to the gentleman from California, Ms. Roy Ballard.
I would just like to point out just how unbelievable it is that Democrats are standing here to urge our Republican colleagues to fund the Department of Homeland Security to keep our nation safe. Either they don't get the serious consequences of what they're doing, or they don't care. Either way, the fact is that this nation and our security is in jeopardy because of their irresponsible actions with regards to the full-year funding of the Department of Homeland Security. Secretary Mayorkas just highlighted for us just how serious the consequences will be. For example, E-Verify will shut down. That's the program that helps employers verify whether or not someone is eligible to work in the United States. Other personnel who are responsible for the coordination of frontline activities in the event that we do have an attack, they will be furloughed. They won't be in the office working without pay like other essential personnel. They will be furloughed. And those are the very people that we need in the event of a serious attack. And that was one of the things that was pointed out after 9/11, that there was no central place of coordination to deal with the aftermath of the attack. That's their job, and they're going to be furloughed. We've already heard that thousands of the essential personnel will be required to work without pay. So there are very, very serious consequences, even back home. FEMA will not be able to do the training of our first responders that is scheduled to happen next month. They will not be able to put out the grants that are needed for our first responders to be able to be ready in the event, not just of an attack, but also of a disaster, a natural disaster, which we know will be coming. We know that we're going to have hurricanes. We know that there's going to be flooding, fires in California. These things are going to happen, and our first responders will not have everything that they need in order to most effectively respond. So the consequences are serious. And we're here, again, to urge, unbelievably, we're here to urge our Republican colleagues to do the responsible thing, to fund Homeland Security fully for 2015 so that our department can effectively do the job that they're intended to do, and that is to defend the American people and our country.
Let me ask Mr. Israel, our Chair of Policy and Communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, these Republicans all over the country went to the airport, stood in the TSA lane, showed their boarding passes and their IDs to a TSA agent. What they should have said to that TSA agent is, I get to go to Washington and play games and keep my paycheck. You have to keep me safe and surrender your paycheck. That's what they should have said. Look, if they are so concerned with the president's executive order that they're willing to take away the paychecks of hardworking TSA agents, I challenge them to give up their paychecks. Give up your paycheck if you're a member of Congress, if you are so concerned with this executive order. Give up your paycheck until you can somehow nullify or rescind this executive order. Once again, they are taking us from one manufactured crisis to another manufactured crisis, to yet another manufactured crisis. I do not mind them being dumb. I do mind them being dangerous. And this manufactured crisis is dangerous. It weakens us. It undermines our security. Here's what the American people expect from us. First and foremost, keep us safe. That's something that Democrats and Republicans should agree to. And Republicans are not keeping them safe. And while you're keeping us safe, we want economy-boosting jobs. We want investments in economic infrastructure. We want world-class education and hands-on training. We want paycheck growth. Democrats are offering those solutions, and Republicans, once again, offer partisan games with another cliff and another crisis, this one making us more vulnerable and empowering people who are trying to do us harm. And I yield to the chairman of our Budget Committee. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Van Hollen, the ranking member of our Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Israel. Everything's been said. It's time to vote. Let me just say one thing about that vote so everybody understands the situation. There's a majority in the Senate to pass a bill that funds the Department of Homeland Security, no games, no politics. There's a majority in the House of Representatives today to fund the Department of Homeland Security, no games, no politics. Every Democratic member of the House has already signed a bill to do that. We know there are enough Republicans to do that, and the President has said he will sign it. We could get this done today if only the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate would allow democracy to work its will. We can make sure we protect the American people. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. We'll take a couple of questions. Mike.
It's Wednesday already. This happens. This funding expires on Friday. There's still no bill on the Senate floor, and even if it passes, there's no indication that Banner's going to take it up. So, when you go home, are you telling constituents to brace for a shutdown? Are you expecting a shutdown at this point, or do you think they'll do a CR? Or what do you think is going to happen? I know what you want to happen, but what do you think?
I don't think any of us wants to tell someone in the American public that you got to brace for some attack or some unknown event to occur because our agencies that are there to protect us aren't going to be working, that they have to stand down or not be as prepared because of a political fight Republicans are having, mostly with themselves. Look, I think everyone should know in America that at any moment there could be some form of attack or natural disaster. You never know. But what we can be is prepared. And to stand down our preparation, to stand down the people, the first responders, those who are there to protect us, for no reason other than politics, that's what doesn't make sense. So what do you tell the American people? Be careful. Watch out for the politics that's being played in Washington, which could endanger you. It's not that our men and women who are there to serve us and protect us aren't ready. It's that the politicians in Washington, D.C. are ready to sacrifice that protection to play these political games. And we hope that by Friday they will come to their senses and not play this game. Vice Chair, I don't know if you...
Let me say again, I have this little prop just to point out that time is fleeting. We can't stop that. We also remind ourselves how we got to this position. The Republicans disagree with our president on the executive action he took dealing with immigration. If my Republican colleagues have an issue with the president taking the executive action he's taken, bring a bill to the floor. Let's have a vote on immigration reform. I've been here waiting for 4 years as they have controlled the House of Representatives. The Senate had passed a bill, and we sat here and did nothing on immigration reform. The people of the country wanted us to move on it. And so the president took executive action. And their response is to shut down the agency that actually is in charge of protecting our borders. It's really mind-boggling. As Steve Israel said, it's not only dumb, it's incredibly dangerous that they would do that. Yes, time will run out this weekend. I'm prepared to stay here Friday, Saturday, through Sunday, through next week to get a bill passed. That is a long-term bill, not a short-term extender, a long-term bill. Because it was pointed out, and if my Republican colleagues would have listened to the administration and to the Secretary this morning as we did, they'd understand just how damaging any delay or any ability to plan for the future for our law enforcement around the country, how damaging that will be to municipalities around our country. But they refused to even listen to them, to even hear what they had to say about that. And I think that's incredibly irresponsible and dangerous.
Congressman,
yes.
Can I switch a little bit to the Prime Minister's speech to Congress next week? The administration seems to be hardening their stance against this speech. And I'm wondering what the picture is like inside the caucus right now and how it's changed in the past week. Are people becoming more distant, would you say, from Israel, more bitter about this, or less?
I think in the Democratic caucus, the strong support that I think virtually every member in Congress, not just the Democratic caucus, but in Congress shows for not only a friend and ally, but an essential, an indispensable ally in the Middle East, that continues forward. I think the relationship between the peoples of the United States and Israel are profound and can't be disrupted by this partisan game that was played here with regard to inviting the Prime Minister to come speak. What is disconcerting, what troubles a lot of us, is that the Speaker of the House of Representatives would use the chamber, the House itself, for partisan purposes, something I've never seen in my lifetime. And I dare say I can't think of a time when something like this was done, where you not only breached the regular custom and protocol and how we invite dignitaries and heads of state to come and address us, but to do it in a way underhandedly without informing your colleagues or the President of the United States. And when you put on top of that it's coming so close to an election in Israel, it really does smell that there was some politicking going on. Having said that, this is the head of state of a very important ally, and I think a lot of us take that very seriously. I, for one, want to make sure that the message that we send around the world is that we stand forthright with those who are our allies and friends. And while I find the disrespect that the Speaker has paid the American people by clumsily inviting the Prime Minister to speak, that I hope it doesn't send the wrong messages about where we stand when it comes to the Middle East and doing the right thing. So my opinion is that, as Ricky Ricardo would tell Lucille Ball, you got some splaining to do. And I think the Speaker, unfortunately, really tripped on this badly, thinking that he could do something partisan when it's a very important relationship we have with Israel.
I listened to your question, and at the tail end of it, is there any movement away from Israel within our caucus? Absolutely not. Look, in terms of the question, absolutely not towards Israel nor towards its head of state. In fact, this has always been and will continue to be a bipartisan issue, that we support the existence, the viability, and the strength of the state of Israel. The support that the United States gives is not given to Israel by Republicans in the House of Representatives, nor by Republicans alone in the Senate. It's done in a bipartisan way with the consent of the President when he signs that bill and that legislation to give assistance and support to the people of Israel to help them protect themselves from their enemies within the region. They're our ally. They are in a sea of undemocratic states. They are the only democratic state. And there are so many linkages between the United States and Israel that the petty politics that has been displayed in this recent act or to come is not going to diminish that. I think for myself, I will be there out of respect to that relationship. I want to hear the Prime Minister as well. But I'm also not blind to the politics that has gone on here. The lack of respect that the Speaker has shown to the leader of the Democratic caucus and the leadership of the Democratic Senate, and more directly to our President, the President of the United States, not doing this in consultation, inviting a head of state or a Prime Minister in this case to the House floor so close to an election. You know, in the end of the day, I believe that the Israeli voters are very sophisticated voters. And they'll read into this in the ways that they will do that. But I do think that the Speaker was wrong and owes the American people an apology for that.
Thanks very much.